We've been very interested in the concept of making Islamic finance more wholesome. Speakers have been talking about the concept of tayyib earlier this morning, and we see this as a continuum of our thinking that leads into SDGs and the recent PRB, the UN PRB. We see this as a big opportunity for Islamic finance to move the dialogue away from the substance over form debate and to use the SDGs and PRB and PRI as a way of creating a new approach for Islamic finance and a new dynamic. UK Islamic Finance Council is the first Sharia advisory body to actually have signed up to the UN PRB, and we were recently in New York a few days ago with Charles from Gatehouse when the UN PRB was announced, and we got various partnerships with the UNDP in various areas to try and promote Islamic finance and to progress it, and in particular in relation to the SDGs. What we are currently doing, there's two things I'd just like to talk about. We are working on a research project that is looking at the SDGs in particular and how they interrelate with Islamic finance. And the aim of this research project is, as we always do, is to try and focus on practical outcomes that can help the Islamic finance sector to develop. But I think one thing that's come out is perhaps a more nuanced approach needs to be taken when you're talking about how much support there is for SDGs. I think it depends really on which part of the world that you're looking at. Clearly some parts of the world have taken on the SDGs and the ESG environment to a greater degree than other countries. So having sweeping sort of statements that the world has taken on board these concepts is wrong. One has to be a bit more focused in terms of geographical areas. Education has come through very clearly from the discussions we've had with various stakeholders. There's different levels of understanding of the SDGs, and probably more important, how do you take the SDGs and translate them into practical steps that an organisation can take in order to take the SDGs on board. Embedded with that, I think, is a challenge for any organisation that wants to change its culture or its basic mission statement. If you look at change management theories, there are different ways of doing this. Is it purely just from a top-down approach, or do you have to involve all of the staff involved in the project? Do you introduce systems so that, for example, if a bank executive was to turn down a project because it wasn't meeting your SDG criteria, and that means that he or she won't meet their individual annual targets, or the department that they're working for misses their target for the year, does that mean that they will be punished financially? So the whole concept of taking on board the SDGs involves a change in culture, and as I said, there are different ways and different approaches of taking this on board. Do you just limit looking at a project at the credit committee approval process and say, yes, it meets our SDG criteria and therefore we'll make the funding available? Or do you monitor that project on an ongoing basis and inbuild provisions that allow you perhaps to call an event of default and call in the financing if the borrower doesn't fulfill those SDG requirements on an ongoing basis? So these are some sort of issues that have come up, and as I said, this is an ongoing research project, and we will hopefully be issuing various thought leadership publications over the next 12 to 18 months. The second And final point, which I think Omar Sheikh has already mentioned earlier this morning, is that we have been talking to the government about setting up a Islamic finance SDG task force, which would be international in composition. And as Omar mentioned, just yesterday afternoon we got the word from the government that they will be supportive of this. And so now we're building out on that to create a task force. And the aim there is to try and collect different views and to see how, in practical terms, and again I stress that, in practical terms, how that task force can help the industry, the Islamic finance industry, progress in this area of the SDGs.